Welcome to Leadership Bites with myself, your host, Guy Bloom. This is a leadership podcast where I have conversations with colleagues, I chat with guests, and sometimes there'll be just me talking. You can connect with me at livingbrave.com, and when you enjoy the episode, subscribe and please tell everyone. The technology's telling me what to do, and I'm looking like a goddamn professional. But on that note, so listen, Ken, absolutely fabulous to have you on this episode of Leadership Bites. Welcome.
Thanks, Guy. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And as I always do for anybody that listens to this podcast, they're already rolling their eyes and thinking, oh, here he goes, is I know who you are. And I always think, rather than do an introduction when I've got the person in front of me who can actually talk for themselves, if you're at a barbecue and somebody said, tell me what you're about, what do you do? Rather than that, launching into a full CV and a full interview response, can just bring to life for people that don't know who you are, this is what I'm about.
Well, I would tell you that my proudest moments are I'm a father of one daughter who now has one granddaughter, which is wonderful. I've been married for almost 40 years, which is wonderful. I've been accused of being a blue-collar entrepreneur, okay, whatever that might be, and I love it. It's something that I'm very proud to wear as a moniker. And I wrote a book called Blue Collar Cash, which kind of details what you should think about life and how your life can be designed the way you want it to be. And I do a little bit of life coaching and some speaking. So yeah, that's kind of who I am.
Well, let's jump into that, because that blue collar cash is what attracted me to having this conversation. And I always think, a little bit like many things in life, you can't plan something. I mean, you can hope it does well and you can put your best effort into it, but especially with books, you can write them, but it doesn't necessarily mean any bugger's going to read them. So it took off a little bit, but to give a sense of just what inspired you to write Blue Collar Cash, because I know, having written my own book, the intellectual idea of doing it and the reality of creating a thing requires some effort. So what kept you going? What was your point? What was your motive?
Well, the very first point was my daughter got sick when she was 12. And I talk about that in the book a little bit. And, any parent or group of parents, I mean, it's a nightmare. It's 5 years of hell when you're watching your daughter recover from an illness. Now, she got through it fine, but obviously it's, cancer's not nothing to mess with. And so I had a lot of time to think about, what if I was going to write her a letter about life, about what should she be chasing? What should she be anticipating? What would that look like? And, you're sitting around in doctor's offices and oncology rooms and, ultrasound offices, and you have a lot of time to think. So the words comfort, peace, and freedom, which is a level that I think everyone should try to achieve. I couldn't lose those words, Guy, if I tried. They kept showing up everywhere, like seeing a yellow Volkswagen, and then all of a sudden you see them everywhere, right? So those words just kept coming back, and I kept trying to think about what that meant to me. And what it ultimately meant was, everyone has a version or a vision of what they want their life to look like. They don't talk about it a lot. They don't even draw it out. They just kind of have it in the back of their brain. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could get people to kind of explore that, put it out there, use the visual side of their brain, and then allow all those powerful systems inside your neurotransmitters to help you find that life. So I started just writing a long letter to her about what I thought was important. And then I started using friends of mine as examples who are blue-collar entrepreneurs who've done crazy good for themselves, but had to overcome the most horrific circumstances in order to get through that, which is what she was doing. And a long letter turned into 80,000 words. And then, my gosh, there's an editor, there's an agent, there's a publisher, and it's a whirlwind. And it turned into a bestseller. And I'm eternally grateful and horribly blessed to have that happen.
And what was your journey for you? I think it always helps people understand maybe your point of reference if they understand the journey that got you to where you are today. So just give us that sense of, Guy, without taking up too much of your time, my life's journey kind of looked a little bit like this.
So always had part-time jobs when I was 12, 13 years old. Always traded my labor for something I wanted to come into my life, which is how that thought process started early on. 4 brothers in a very small house in Amherst, Ohio. My father was a Marine, ran the house like a barracks, which was good sometimes and not good sometimes. Imperfect perfectionism was like the way it was the rule of the day. And so I started when I was 15 getting my first real job. My high school shared a fence with an industrial park, and we used to cut through that fence to go to the carryout after school and hang out. And I one day I walked into one of these businesses and said, "What do you do?" And they said, "We dig ditches." I said, "I can do that." So wholly qualified to dig ditches. I did that during the summer, and in the winter I worked in the office after school. And that turned into being 18 years old. And what am I going to do? And they said, we're opening franchises. Do you want to help us with that? So I did. I moved to Columbus, Ohio, and then Cincinnati, and then Chicago and Pittsburgh, 6 months at a time, opening up businesses for other owners, franchises. And then got tired of living out of a suitcase, guy, and opened my own company here in 1986 in Toledo, Ohio. Started with 6 people, and I think we have over 200 today. So it's been a hell of a ride.
It is incredible how some people never find something that gives them that steerage, and then others, I'm wholly qualified to dig ditches is a great phrase that I think should be a t-shirt. I might invest in that. What are you qualified to? I'm wholly qualified to dig ditches. That's my starting point. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It is about, do you know what, sometimes just get going, and the world will start to present things to you, and that's what I hear in there anyway.
Yeah, well, for me, it all started with an aluminum baseball bat. You remember when they first came out with aluminum baseball bats? And I wanted one of those. And my father was like, "Listen, I got you a wooden bat. All your brothers used it. You can use that when it's good enough." I said, "Well, I wanted to do this." So he said, "Well, go find a way to make it happen." So I either delivered newspapers or shoveled driveways or mowed lawns or whatever. There was always a thing to chase for me. There was always a thing to anticipate. I just couldn't believe that I could go give my efforts to somebody and they would give me dollars for that. So then the things got bigger, the goals got bigger, the chase got longer, but the anticipation was awesome because my first car, then my first house, and joining a golf club, and then collecting cars and doing the things that I do now. It's just been one anticipation, one chase after another. And so I think the important thing is you can get through just about any job in the world if there's an important enough reason why, or a big enough reason why. And I don't think we as people start out with the why very often. We kind of wait till something happens and hope life happens to us rather than us happening to life. And I think that's the biggest difference in the world for me. Is I wanted to happen to life. I wanted to control every aspect and every outcome of it as much as I could. And I learned it early on over aluminum baseball bat and just never stopped doing it.
There's a couple of things there. One is obviously you're saying aluminium incorrectly. So I just wanted to point that out.
Right. Am I saying it correctly or incorrectly?
What the hell's we say aluminium, so I don't know what aluminum is. I mean, I presume it's the same thing. I'm joking.
Bat. Yeah, that's what I got.
But I do notice that there is something there about, I talk about doing and being. There's what you're going to do, and then there's who you're being while you're going to do it. And maybe there is something about that at the start of your career, because maybe you're not exactly where you're probably supposed to be when you first start out, but who you're going to be while you're doing it, which is somebody that knows that I want to have control over my life. I want to actually be proactive. So this may or may not be where I'm going to start and finish, but if I know what I'm actually who I'm being while I'm doing this, that's actually going to set the tone and be the vehicle probably for a lot of things.
Well, it is interesting because I always thought that there's this thing called law of attraction, or there's visualization, or there's hopes and wishes and dreams. And then I came quickly to realize that without a timed pathway to any one of these things, hopes and wishes and dreams just stay there. They stay there in that land of never happening. And I'm not telling people not to hope, wish, or dream. I'm saying if you're going to do that, attach a timed pathway to every one of those things. Things, the more those transmitters fire faster and faster to the point where they build a bridge. And once they build a bridge, your body almost thinks that it already owns that thing that you're seeking. And so therefore now involuntarily, your actions, your awareness, your opportunities, all those things get heightened towards the chase of that particular thing. So most people never use that side of their brain. which I think is incredibly unfortunate because, somebody put that software in there for a reason. And I think we should all endeavor to use it. And so I always thought it was something that if you just kind of focused on something, it would kind of happen. But there's actual real science behind it. There's another human being inside of you that can push you towards gaining the things that you want in your life if you just focus on them hard enough. And usually through drawing them out and seeing them on a daily basis, that's how that happens. I just thought that was amazing. And so now I teach that as much as I can.
One of my big things about doing the podcast is to stand on the shoulder of giants and hear people say things that make me go, I'm gonna write that down. So I love hearing that. And I just put there, thinking without timelines creates ownership without action. And I'm interested in that, which is just that a lot of people, you talk to them and you go, well, you definitely feel like you own it, which is where your disappointment sits, my friend, because you're not actually put any timelines on it and there's no action. Right. So, yes, I'll copyright that and use that as my own, clearly. But
I stood in front of 300 road builders last week in North Dakota, where it was 7 below zero. Not inside, thank God, but I stood in front of them and I told them, I said, I want you to write down the words dream, wish, and hope and goal. And they wrote them down. And then I said, now, next to it, I want you to write booked, scheduled, planned, and a timed pathway. And I told them to scratch home, hope, wish, and dream. Just scratch them off the paper because I want those words gone from your vocabulary. And the reason is because without a timed pathway to something, it just always remains in dreamland. And I think that's unfortunate because so many people waste so much of the most precious asset you own ever, which is time. They waste time in waiting for those things to manifest themselves when in fact they're in control of when they happen.
You've definitely heard this, I'm sure, and I'm not a golfer, so I'm going to even probably say the wrong person, but I've heard that story I think it's the story it works with any golfer. But Nick Faldo hits the ball, lands on the green, and somebody goes, lucky shot, and he goes, it's amazing, the harder I practice, the luckier I get, which is something around, insert any golfer's name there, probably doesn't matter. But my point is,
I'm a very avid golfer, so I appreciate every word of that.
And I think there's something there, isn't it? Because what is practice? Practice is action. And guess what? Whether or not it's I get more competent or whether or not I come into contact with more people or whatever it is, action creates output. Even if it's other people impacting against you, it leads and it vibrates and it leads to other things, which is what I think I hear in what you're saying. So I'm interested in, you challenge the idea that college, let's just say education, to a certain degree, should be the only path to success. And I've got a 12-year-old now, and I look at, well, if you're going to be a vet or a doctor or a surgeon, then yeah, you're probably going to have to go to university because, whatever. I get that. But actually, to walk out of education with a sizable debt, with a degree that may or may not be beneficial versus spending 5 or 6 years cracking on, I'm very interested in that. So I'd love you to just talk a little bit about that whole college may not be the only path to success.
Well, the interesting thing is if colleges had, like any business, if they had a stake in what their product came out like, then it would be a whole different outlook. Because right now, colleges will take your money. They'll even borrow it from the government. They'll take your money and they don't care what the output is. Like they'll let you study something that is unmarketable, okay? Eastern European language translation for whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, you could say the same thing about, there's degrees all over the world that are just useless. But, they may be interesting for the moment, but it's just a reason to say, okay, now I have a major, right? The most amazing thing about this whole process, Guy, is, 40% of kids today go into college without knowing why they're going. They don't have an end game, like you just said, a vet, a surgeon, a lawyer, engineer. 25% of those kids then change their degree because they picked the wrong one. Horribly wasteful and expensive. And then only 33% of degrees ever get used ever. And those are the ones you mentioned, doctor to doctor, lawyer to lawyer, architect to architect, whatever. So I'm saying to myself, all these people are racking up all this debt. And they come out the other side and they're like, well, wait a minute. I thought I was going to have this $90,000 a year job now because I did this. That's what I was told. And yet it isn't true. So we're letting these people down year after year after year. And now we're overproducing some of these degrees that are unmarketable and underproducing things like blue collar jobs, like millwrights and welders and carpenters and plumbers and electricians. But the funny thing is, supply and demand is a funny thing, right? I mean, where the supply is low and demand is high, that's where the money goes. So now we've got carpenters making 100, 150, $200,000 a year, and electricians and plumbers, and these people getting out of college are making 50 because there's 10 million of them. There's too many. So the pendulum has to swing back, and that's kind of what my point is. There has to be a balance in any economy. And you can't have everyone going to college or who's going to fix the street light or who's going to do some of these things. And so that's my contention is I don't care. My whole thinking is before you put a stigmatism or stigmatize a blue collar career, just remember it doesn't matter so much what you do for a living as it much matters what you do with what you do for a living, which is why you're doing it in the first place. And that's where I always say to myself, can you at least think about what you want your life to look like first? Because there's many ways to get there.
I just suddenly thought, it's the curse of knowledge that white collar and blue collar, I know what that's referencing. So if we're going to say white collar is, what would we say, professional, kind of vocational, and blue collar is more manual, more sort of working sort of out of the office in the real world. Is that how you would draw that distinction?
If you want to know the history, white collar came from back in the old days. You would actually have a big white plastic collar that you would snap onto your suit, no matter what suit you were wearing. And that kind of notated that you were a professional person of some sort. You were educated, you were a professional, you were in some sort of an office environment. Blue collar was real simple. They used to call them dungarees or blue jeans or Levi's. That's what you wore. You wore a blue shirt, blue pants, and you worked out in wherever you were doing, plumbing, electrical, laying brick or whatever. So that's where the original blue collar, white collar came from. So that's how you separate the two.
Now, in my mind in the UK, and I'm pretty sure it feels the same in the US, that I actually think blue collar has been stigmatized. I actually think that there's a kind of a club of university or getting that degree. And I think there's that going on. And I think there needs to be something about reprioritizing. I mean, we talk about DEI and all these kind of things. Well, actually, you know what? Let's start there at a very simple level. And I also kind of note that one of the things about going to university used to be that regardless of what you did, obviously if it was vocational, that was clear. But even if it wasn't vocational, the point was that it said you can think and reason and you can hold multiple points of view and you're hardy, you're anti-fragile, you're resilient. But it also feels now that what's happened is with the way that universities have gone, that actually people are coming out less able to hold an argument. They are more fragile. And that's actually said you've got this big debt, but you're now less valuable in the same context. I don't know how that resonates with you, but I definitely feel that.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, good for you, because I've been on 301 podcasts in the last 2 years, and no one has put it quite that good. So good
Boom.
for you for doing
there
that.
We go. This is a clip then.
100%. It used to be that you went to college so you could learn to be a problem solver. You could learn to be independent thinker. You could learn to handle your finances. You could do all of those things. You were becoming an adult, if you will. Now they're going there, and some of these kids are, they're just partying and playing, beer pong for 4 years, and they're getting offended everywhere, every time, all day long. And the open thinking has now gotten closed. Okay, it's our way of thinking or none. And I think you're right. I think the person who's out there having to in a trade, if you will, they're having to control their input. They're having to control their output. They control the quality of that output. They control their day, their time, their schedule. They control their financial gain, because it's them or else. I mean, I'm out here doing this job. I'm building a house, or I'm fixing a car, or and these jobs are paying huge sums of money. But it's on me. I mean, I have to get up, put on my clothes, and go to work. And there is some independence in that. And therein mind, there is a strength of character that comes out of that, which I think you're right. We're getting less of in these nondescript degrees that are coming out of college. And so that's why I'm saying, I mean, I was at a party a few nights ago, a few years ago, and I remember there was 3 or 4 moms there. And well, my daughter's going to Ohio State University, or my son's going to Michigan State University, and all these really nice colleges. Well, they were, well, what's her name's son going to do? Oh, he's just a plumber. And I'm like, just a plumber. Okay. I know that kid. He's got 6 vans, he's got 12 employees, he's making an absolute killing, but he's just a plumber. So it's interesting because when you talk about the debt, you know, nowadays you can take 4 years of college and all in with every expense you can possibly imagine. It could be 40, 50,000 a year. So that's 200,000 on the negative side of your asset base if you borrow that money. And you can go out right now and earn $35 an hour in construction, which is 50, 60, $70,000 a year. That's 200,000 on the plus side of your asset base. That's like a $400,000 swing by the time you're 23 years old. And all I'm saying is at least consider that for your son or daughter before you just push them in with the herd and hope for the best. So when I tell that story to parents, they're like, oh my God, how come I've never heard that before?
And yet it's so clearly obvious. It's not a secret. And at my 12, my boy kind of, he still wants to be a spaceman and a cowboy both at the same time, which is great. So there's not too much pressure, though I will be in due course going, son, I just want you to listen to this podcast. It'll be a couple of years yet, but he will be listening to this. So Milo, how are you? You're now about 14, 15. So, but there we go. But there is something about that recognizing I guess the social narrative that goes with it. And there's something about saying to kids that maybe are educationally competent, and they are, I understand in some respects, for those that academia is not their path, it will steer them into that kind of blue collar space. And yeah, they go on and make a blinking fortune. But actually, what about if you're smart and you are from a certain social strata, but you go into that space? In reality, by that definition, you should clean up. And that's the interesting thing to me, that it doesn't matter how you end up there. If you do it well, you're starting from straight away as opposed to 4 or 5 years worth of debt, then actually, I think there's just massive opportunities for people to go in and turn up on time, do what they say, bring their level of social etiquette to the scenario that they're in, whatever it might be. And actually, by golly, if I was going to say anything to my 12-year-old, wrap your head around that, son, and by the time you're 24, 25, you could be set for life.
Yeah, when you look at in the United States, there's like this epidemic of people that are 45, 50, 55, 60 years of age that have run businesses, blue collar businesses their whole life. They're entrepreneurs and they built these amazing companies and they have nobody to leave them to. You know what I mean? There isn't interest in people coming up behind and trying to take these companies over. And I think to myself, my gosh, if I was 20 years old and I could take over this guy's masonry company where he's got work for 2 years because of the demand. He's got the rates that he charges are astronomical, but his work is good. If I could just shadow that guy and go to work for him for 3 or 4 years, okay, and then he's going to retire, I can take his company over and hit the ground, not walking, but running. I mean, I'm talking about sprinting. There's so much of that going on that, to your point, anyone who's got a little bit of, entrepreneurial characteristics, which I believe we all have, if there's a reason why behind it, you can take advantage of these things because they literally have some of these companies are just closing because there's no one to take them on. And I think to myself, and I wrote this in Blue Collar Cash, I think all of us have about 9 characteristics that make up an entrepreneur, whether it's persistence, resilience, faith, courage, hope, initiative, vision, all those types of things, generosity, humility. I think we all have those characteristics that an entrepreneur has. We just need a reason for them to come out, okay? And so that's why I say, can we start with that picture that's on the puzzle box? And that's your life. If I dump these pieces on your table, if I take that box away, you're going to have a real hard time building that puzzle, right? Because you start with the box. You always look at the box first and then you start building. Why shouldn't that be a metaphor for your life? If you can draw the puzzle box that is to be your best lived life, now you get to see that, and that's the driving force. Now you got the pieces that you're assembling, and you're looking at that puzzle box 10,000 times to put a 1,000-piece puzzle together, right? So why wouldn't you let that puzzle box that is to be your life be the driving force, and
So you,
allow those entrepreneurial characteristics to come out of you, and then take on one of those hundreds of opportunities to help you get there?
So you talk about goal setting and visualization quite a lot, and I think that's a classic example of it. So I don't know, to bring that to life a little bit more, what is the process for somebody? I mean, how old can you start that? Can you start that as soon as you can dream, as long as you put timelines to it? Talk to me about that.
Well, I wanted a baseball bat when I was 12 years old, right? I needed $30. So I was making $1.50 an hour. I needed to work 20 hours, and there's my baseball bat. And I knew that I could work 4 hours this week, and I could work, 6 hours that week. So there's 10. So there was my pathway. I knew that 20 hours from now, I was going to go to Kmart and buy this baseball bat. I mean, it was as simple as that. And I to me, it was so amazingly simple that I'm like, why isn't everybody doing this? This just seems too mathematically simple, right? So that's now in the book, I talk about how you put a simple baseball bat equation together, and there's more steps to it. First off, you have to congratulate yourself, because now you're thinking like one of those 1% people that are willing to go that far to visualize. But you have to, dream something very clearly. And then step 3 is you have to put a pathway to it. 20 hours at $1.50 an hour gets you there. And then you have to put it in action where you're saving this money where nobody can get it. You know what I mean? You can't put your paws on it if you want to, because it's dedicated to that. And then you share that goal with somebody else. In this case, it was my father, who would pick me up and push me along if I ever faltered. And all that's in the book. But it was amazing to me, because we all have the ability to think this way. It's built into our hard drives. The software is already pre-downloaded when we're born. And all you have to do is start using that side. And so many people, they're actually, if I do all this, then maybe I can start living. No, it's not about that. I want to know what the then is first. Then I'll figure out the ifs, right? So I literally want myself to happen to life versus the opposite of that, which I said earlier. And so that's why I think if we just show people this simple process, they're going to be so much better off. And you go, oh my gosh, I've been living all this time waiting for something to happen, when in fact I'm supposed to be making something happen. And it's just through the process of a timed pathway.
So if we talk about mindset, and there isn't actually, just pausing for 1 second, what I do notice is, I understand we're talking about blue collar cash, and that's the title of the book. It feels to me that this is a universal truth, which by definition tells me that it's usually true if it's true everywhere. And that just resonates with me listening to you talk, that actually there's a lot of scenarios where I could take all the things that you've said and change the heading, and it would be completely applicable. And I think that tells me, that then doesn't raise itself as a red flag to me. Oh, it's only very specifically true in that particular niche if you're doing it. These are human truths, and that's why this works. So mindset plays a huge role in success. What's the biggest mental shift people need to make, would you say, take control of their future?
Well, I asked the same group of people last week. I said, is there any chance that I could pick one of you in the crowd and know what your favorite color is? No. Is there any chance I could know the exact car you'd like to drive? Probably not. Is there any chance I could design your house the way you see it? No. Your favorite vacation? Nope. Your favorite pet, a dog or a cat, what color, what would you name it? There's no way I would know that, but you do. So many times we allow society to influence our pathway when we're the ones that know this. We know our favorite everything. So why are we allowing other people to dictate or to design or to influence or to shape our lives for us? It drives me crazy, because you're relinquishing yourself to the influence, confluence, or societal norm of somebody else. It just drives me nuts. So the first thing I think of is, will you just trust yourself for a second here? You know all these things. You know what your perfect nirvana would look like. You get some crayons and a big poster board. Start drawing that out. Create a Pinterest board if you have to. Get brochures and pictures, whatever you have to do. Create that vision that is your life the way you want it. The heck with everybody else. And I mean everybody else, okay? Especially some of your family members who don't want you to succeed. They'd rather have you commiserate with them and just stay in the spot because it's safe and it's comfortable, right? So trust yourself, get that vision that you want for your life, and understand that all the things that you draw on that board, all the pictures that you put on that board, they're all many timed pathways. Some are 6 months, some are 16 months, some are 6 years, some are 16 years. Okay. But they're all pathways that you can embark on. And that way you create a for sure scenario. I mean, you create a for sure, that's what my life is going to look like. You just have to move the timelines to where it's comfortable for you to pull these things off one by one. And the confidence that you get, Guy, from doing your first one is, oh my God, this works. This is so simple. Why didn't anybody tell me this before? Now I'm on to my second one. Now I'm on to my third one. It got so important to me that we put this huge black glass board in our hallway. It's right on the other side of that door. And it's 8 feet long and 8 feet tall. And every one of us has these little, neon markers that we go out. We write these goals up on this board in intricate detail: beginning date, steps, end date, sign, colors, everything. And then everybody else in the building gets to see who's up to what. And the power of that collective is enormous. And it's great because the people you're sharing it with come from all other walks of life. They're not that sister of yours that really wishes you don't get successful because then you might go away or something. You know what I'm saying? They won't sabotage you. The power is amazing. And it's frustrating to me that we don't all have, that's just not automatically taught, And so I'm doing whatever I can to put the word out.
One of the things I hear in there is our counsel offers us their fears. You want the best for your child. You want them to be safe. So actually, well, go and get a degree, because at least then you'll definitely earn, or you'll definitely get a job that will allow you to. And actually, I fear you. What's the dream I've got? What's the thing I've got in my head? Being a bum and being on the street homeless if you don't have a degree. There's this anxiety, and I think our counsel offers us our fears, and I think that's something I'm very alert to.
Well, if you think about it, just take the United States. So there's 167 million people considered full employment. Okay. According to our Bureau of Labor Statistics, which I looked at painstakingly, 77 million people do something with their hands to this day. So if tomorrow we start shoving 100% of our future kids into college, we're in big trouble, right? Because half the population still does something to keep the population going, right? And so it could never be true that a high school would say, well, everyone has to go to college. They're not telling you the truth when they say that. In fact, I spoke in front of a whole bunch of guidance counselors, high school guidance counselors in Columbus, Ohio, a few years back. And they came up to me in the book signing line, and I'm signing books, and they would very quietly say to me, we're not allowed to tell someone he should be a carpenter, even though he's really good at it, because we have to tell everyone they have to go to college. So please keep talking out loud, because we're not allowed to say that. It's
fascinating, isn't it?
It's terrible. And
this is a machine, isn't it? This is the reality of this is, I'll say it, is there's George Carlin, the comedian, said there doesn't need to be a plot. I'm butchering his words, but there doesn't need to be a plot if everybody's outcomes or requirements of outcomes are the same.
Yeah, he was a genius, by the way. What people don't know about George Carlin is how much of a genius he actually was, beyond the humor. I mean, that guy was just straight up.
I think that's what allows you to be that funny, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because he knows how to take those life situations and turn them into
conspiracy. That was the word he used. Well, there doesn't need to be a conspiracy if everybody's future outcomes are shared. We don't all need to attend the conspiracy meeting because we all want that to happen. So we all want them to go to that university because actually that keeps this whole machine going.
Yeah. And we could go off on college for a long period of time. I'm not anti-college. I mean,
No, no,
if
mate.
you want to operate on my shoulder so I can get back out on the golf course, I want you to know everything about a knife there is before you pick it up and come at me. But
100%.
it is a little disheartening when all these kids are borrowing all this money to go to school, and yet some of these colleges have 8, 10, 15, 20, 30 billion dollars in their endowment funds. And when you ask them what's that for, student service, they can't give you an answer. They're just managing cash. So that's a little scary to me, but hopefully the pendulum's swinging the other way.
So I think I wouldn't say it's easy, but if you're younger, you might have some associated risks, yes, with your career choices, but you might go, if I'm going to do it, let's do it now. I can maybe always shift in due course. What about for people that are in jobs they're a little bit further along the pattern of their life and they feel trapped? And maybe what are your thoughts around somebody that wants to shift into something that actually, do you know what, I think I could do? I think I should be doing. I don't even know why I'm doing this, but I've just financially got myself into a rut and I'm fearful.
Well, I can tell you that's a great question. So I've had so many people that have said, Ken, I read your book and quit my job. But I would say this. So one particular gentleman, there was two particular people that that are very memorable. One of them was a plumber's assistant when he was in college, loved working in the field, loved working with people, loved being outside, went to school, became a medical salesman, was in a cubicle on the 15th floor of some building, hated it, read my book, went back, joined the plumbing firm. Now he has his own business, never been happier. Thinks I walk on water because of the book that I wrote. The other one was pretty cool because this guy, he loved building furniture, and he built these things called river edge tables where you take a piece of wood and you put epoxy in the middle of it and they're beautiful.
I see that on TikTok and so I love those. They're amazing.
Yeah. So,
and by golly, there's a price attached to it as well.
There is. And so what he did was, as he wound up his River Edge business, he wound down his other career. And you can do that because, like, when I started my business, we had long form graph paper and pencils we'd keep our numbers on. Now, with, a cell phone and a pickup truck, you can run a business from anywhere. So the side gig is very powerful right now. And what he did was he would build these tables at night on the weekends, and then he would go sell them at county fairs and shows and, furniture shows and whatever. And then pretty soon that started taking off, and he downsized his current job. So that flop, there's like an X factor in the middle, and that's what you have to find. When you get to the X factor, you can make the jump. And it was so cool to see him do that because he's so happy now. He has a barn in his backyard. He gets up for work and walks back to his barn. He doesn't even have to get in his car anymore. And he builds these beautiful pieces and sells them all over the place. And I've seen gals who are welders who started doing welding art. And one gal is selling art for $1 million a copy. It's insane. So it's just, you have to have the faith of it. You have to have the whys. There has to be a lot of whys out there. That picture, that vision board has to be driving you. And then you can take that risk and do it. But today's the first day of the rest of your life, right? And you got to take that jump.
And I think there is something about the whys being important, because when somebody says to me, Guy, I'd love to become a coach because I can be self-employed and I can just set my own hours, I go, well, just want to pause there for a minute, sonny boy, right? Because in reality, when you've got where you need to go, perhaps, So I do like what I hear from you saying there. Run two horses at the same time. Yeah, it probably will be harder work, but actually, if you're not prepared to do that, it's probably not for you.
Yeah, that's right. So many people have said, hey, Ken, when they found out that I wrote this best-selling book, which, again, I'm still blown away even when I say that. Yeah, I'm going to write a book. And I'm like, okay, yeah, good. You do that. And then like a year later, how's that? Yeah, I'm going to write that book. I'm like, okay, you do that. It has to be something, to your point, that there's a lot of whys behind it. And those have to be very powerful.
Yeah, definitely don't give up your day job, sit there for a year and a half writing a book with no income, presuming it's going to be a bestseller.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe some stepping, but it is, isn't it? It's about getting up momentum. It's about understanding how that lands. It's about saying, do you know what? He's like, oh, I'm going to be a singer. Yeah. Well, planning to be a pop star is slightly different to, you might be working the bars, you might be doing weddings and bar mitzvahs. Run the horse alongside where you are first, right? But do it with intent. Yeah, but do it with intent, right? Put that time in, and then you'll know. And also, you might find, do you know what? In my mind, that was a beautiful thing. Now that I'm doing it, a hobby isn't always your job. You know.
That's exactly right. And, it's funny because I love comedians, and I know you do too, because we talked about it. But if you look at Nate Bargatze, hilarious comedian in the United States, look back, 10, 15 years ago, he's exactly what you're saying. He's in some frozen town in Peoria, Illinois on a Friday night talking to 8 people, and he's breaking his chops in order to get this happen. But look at him now. He was passionate, and he's amazing. So there is a path to everything. And some people's paths are quicker and some are longer, but as long as you're on the path, that's all that matters.
That really resonates with me, that especially with comedians, you go, look how quick they are. Yeah, because that's 10 years of being just them and 3 people in the audience that made them that good. It's not like they didn't give up the job last Monday and suddenly go, hey, look me, I'm a phenomenon on TikTok. It doesn't happen like that. So just being alert to time and just 1 or 2 questions. Are there any, we talk about sort of myths around what financial security might look like and how it might hold people back. Is that something we've covered, or are there any things in there that actually, no, I think there are some myths in there about what that might be that it's worth just mentioning?
Well, more simple math for your audience, okay? By the time, from the time you're age 21 to the time you're 63, right? That's 42 years. If you divide 42 years by 7, that equals 6. Now, if your money doubles every 7 years, then you have 6 doubles in your lifetime. 6 periods of 7 years, right? So if you start when you're 21, your last double, I can paint a scenario for you where if you save $60 a week for 10 years, you're going to have $1.2 million in your account by the time you're 63 years of age. And it's because of the doubling. But I will tell you this, if you start at 28 or you start at 34, you've missed the first 2 doubles. But more importantly, you've missed the last 2 doubles where they're the biggest. Because your last double, your money could go from $600,000 to $1.2 million. So if you miss that, you're only going to walk away with $600,000. Not that that's not a lot of money, or $300,000, right? If you start late. So all I can say is, can we start using the power of young money? Can we start teaching that to people so that when they're 21 years of age, they can put their first $60 away, forget about it, you never had it, you never saw it, you never spent it, you never miss it. Can we start talking about the power of that so that we can build independent people who don't have to worry about these social safety nets that are going to, who knows if they're even going to be around? It's silly that we're not teaching that. And it drives me crazy, but I like to put that out in simple terms, because when I do, people go, holy cow, I can't believe how simple that it is. There it is right there for you.
I think I see these things on some of the social media things that I look at, and people that focus on helping people with their finances and people's finance. You don't need to be an expert in compound interest, but people's literal lack of understanding about how a credit card works.
Oh, yeah. Or
just at that baseline level is absolutely horrific. But actually just goes to show how financially illiterate people are. I don't think you need to be able to read the Wall Street Journal or whatever it is, but I think that at the baseline level, people just don't understand the basics.
I use this analogy for credit cards, and it was real simple. Let's assume you're renting a table and chairs for a party in your backyard this weekend, right? And you have the party, and you're renting the table and chairs, and they charge you by the day, right? So when you're done with the party, are you going to leave those tables and chairs sit in your backyard for 3, 4, 5 months? No, you're going to return them immediately, right? Because you're paying rent on them every single day. Well, then why are you doing that with your money?
Yeah.
If you know what I'm saying, why are you renting money for all that period of time on a credit card with such high interest when you could just return the tables? And when you look at, people look at that and they go, holy cow, why would I do that? So yeah, there's a reason for a credit card. I get that, but certainly not to waste it like renting tables and leave them in your backyard.
I get it. So listen, you've written Blue Collar Cash. What's coming next, Ken?
Well, I just completed a course, my version 2.0 of my course called The Path to a Successful Life. You can find it at kenrusk.com. And it's a simple course. It's not one of those $2,000 courses where you have to give me your whole life. It's 8 sessions at 45 minutes a session. I guarantee you that it'll change the way you see your life this afternoon. I mean, like today, in 3 hours. It's not something you have to like do and then hope that 6 months from now your life has changed. You'll start looking at your life differently because it's filled with a lot of the stuff that you and I have talked about today. So that's at kenrusk.com. I also am in the middle of my next book. The working title now is called Talent Rules, Blue Collar Tactics in a White Collar World. That's more from the perspective of how can companies create amazing culture so they can attract really great people. So yeah, that should come out in the fall, and yeah, we're real excited about it.
Are you prepared to come back and talk about the new book when it comes out?
Love to, absolutely.
See what I've done there? I've trapped you live.
No, I'm for sure, Guy. I'll be there.
Fantastic. So listen, I again say this, I have some great guests, and I think if I lived local, I'd now be taking you out and saying, right, and then I want to hear more, I want to talk more, but so people go to kenrusk.com, correct? If they want to connect with you?
Yeah, RUSK, kenrusk.com.
And that'll be in the notes that go with the podcast. So listen, I am going to round us off just because I can keep on going and I'm alert to that. So listen, from everybody listening, Ken, I found this a joyous conversation. I've enjoyed it. I've been smiling all the way through and agreeing with every word that you've said. I haven't had to pretend or just keep a veneer on just in case you say something thinking, I don't know if I agree with that. But no, it resonates. So for me and everybody else that's listening, thank you so much for that time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been fun talking to you as well.
I'm just going to press the stop button, stay on, and we'll make sure everything does what it does. But thank you very much. That's it, so I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please share so others get to hear about us, and subscribe so you keep up to date on new episodes. Also visit livingbrave.com if you want to connect with me and find out more about executive coaching, team effectiveness and changing culture. Oh, and of course you can buy my book Living Brave Leadership on Amazon. So on that note, see you soon.